Here we are, and we were just admiring the background right behind us, and you caught us on air. Yeah. Anyway, Bafito CBD.
Benjamin Akakpo, why are you wearing black today?
You know, it's such a coincidence. Because I had no idea what you'd be rocking this morning.
I see.
I'm sure the people out there would be thinking maybe we were coordinating or something, when we are totally innocent. We didn't plan this.
But I think it looks good on the television.
Oh yeah, look, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, actually. Okay. Anyway, there's a whole lot to talk about this morning, but I like doing this nowadays, whenever I'm joined by anyone, in-house or, outside. I remember Kojo Brace when he joined me on Friday talking about the fact that, owing to the prices of fuel, by the way, I filled my car tank with 800 cedis and 38 pesos on Thursday? Yeah, I think it was Thursday or Friday.
Welcome
to the club. Over me.
Same. I also
over me.
Last week Wednesday. So I was my fuel was like my tank was really empty, like down, right? Last bar.
Yeah.
So I get to the fuel station because I feel like I'm the boss.
Yeah, you're the.
And I'm like, oh boss, just fill it up. He's filling.
You see the thing going.
Yeah. 450, and I'm like, okay, no wahala. 550. I'm like, okay, no wahala. 650. And I'm like, when it got to 750, I'm like, boss, when it gets to 800, stop it. Okay, it is fine.
Because I actually had to do same because I mean the thing you want to fill because it's the best situation.
Yeah.
The combustion and everything, it prevents you from spending so much. But in trying to fill, you see the thing just going and the way 100 goes, between the time I switch off, they start and I get out of my car before you get to the Charlie. It has crossed 100. I'm like, hey.
It's terrible. Oh, it is terrible. But
Kojo says he has to drive, get somewhere, board a train, and come this way.
What I think, it's a 50-50 thing. I think convenience is good. You don't have to stress about, driving, the traffic and all of that. You can do extra. And the cost. Yeah, mostly the cost. You can do whatever you need to do for because he told me that it takes about an hour. So in that hour, instead of being in traffic, focusing on the road, you can read, you can take, because waking up at dawn is also not easy. You can take a 30-minute nap while you're in the train.
Because driving is itself work.
Yeah.
Driving is work. And this is... one of those times where if we had an extensive train network at low cost, it would have been very effective for most people, but it is. Also,
even if our public transport system was working well, I think besides the train, the trotros, proper systems, the buses, I think it would have been so much better. And a lot of people have been calling for the buses to get on the road and actually help people try to save money.
Now that you bring it up, just to wrap the conversation, we've always spoken about, look at Metro Mass, look at the Ayalolo system.
Yeah.
From Nkrumah, we had quite, very good systems. In fact, the likes of Cecil Gabra will tell you that you knew that if it was 6:15, the bus would be there at 6:15. Sure. It would get to your location at maybe 6:30. Yeah. And if you wanted to board back, it was there at a certain time, like you would find in Europe, in the United States, in other places. I don't know. What's your experience in South Africa when it comes to rail and when it comes to the bus systems?
So in 2010, prior to 2010, we built something called Gautrain. Right,
yeah,
so that
I've heard of that.
Yeah, so that is our bullet
train.
Our bullet trains. So those bullet trains have buses, So certain places, like you said, 6 o'clock, you have a bus that goes to the Gautrain station. And you know that, so let's say if it takes 15 minutes to get to the train station, so 6 o'clock to 6:15, we have a bus. And then at 6:25 or 6:30, then the train will move. So everything works seamlessly. So I know when I was in university, that's what I would take. So I would go to the bus station, get my bus, and then I go to the Gautrain station. And everything is on time. It works with time. So you know that maybe 10 minutes for your train to move. So you have enough time from the station. Get your ticket if you need to get a ticket. Or we usually use cards, right? If you need to fill your card, it's a Monday morning, you need to fill your card for the
recharge,
week.
right.
You have enough time and then you go. So it's seamless. Even our bus system also works timing-wise. I think, so if we could maybe learn from...
There's something we could learn from our African neighbors.
Yeah.
But let's quickly bring in Suleimana Brahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Suleimana, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ben and
Mapito.
Mapito.
We call her Maps for
Maps.
We call her Maps. She's our own in-house Google Maps.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Brima.
Good morning.
Right. So we'll just start off the conversation from the cost of fuel products and what this means if we had an extensive rail system, what this could have meant. Maybe just a minute of your thoughts on that, and then we get into the papers.
Well, it would have been the best thing to happen, and not even in the context of the fuel prices specifically, but generally in terms of traffic management, in terms of people having to manage their time well and all of that. Certainly, it would have been the best thing to happen. If you go to South Africa, even though, yes, it's not a perfect system, because the rail system works, sometimes it makes movement far easier. And then, of course, in Europe and North America, I mean, it's the cheapest and easiest means to get yourself from one place to the other. So it certainly would have been the best thing to happen if we had one in place.
All right. So let's get into the papers, and I'll start with the Republic Press. Three very interesting stories here, but before that, Mahama mourns word chairman of Osu Ampofo. We also have armed thugs storm police station to free detained suspects. And the big story here is that NPP rubbishes the Ku Me Preko demo, and Oforiatta not ready to go. That is on page 3. And another story on page 8 is Akufo-Addo government has created more jobs than any other in the Fourth Republic. That's according to the Vice President Dr. Baumia. All right, so let's go to the first story, the big story, which is Director of Communications for the New Patriotic Party, Richard Ahengba, has questioned the basis for the Ku Me Preko demonstration. According to him, the action which saw Ghanaians laments that government has not done enough to alleviate the plight of citizens in the struggling economy is a basis. It continues that says Saturday's protest saw a section of Ghanaians, civil society organizations and other activists join the demonstrators in the principal streets of Accra. But for Mr. Ahengba, the only justification he sees in the protest is the display of democracy and nothing beyond that. Other story on page 8, Akufo-Addo government has created more jobs than any other in the Fourth Republic on page 8, according to Dr. Baumia. And he says it is not only job creation, but also the government has built more schools, interchange, airports than any other government in the Fourth Republic. In a remark at the Hogwachocho Festival at Anlo in the Volta region on Saturday, November 5, he said, "We all know we're facing global economic crisis," which Togbe said the third referred to, "and this is a crisis that is being felt all over the world, and the cost of living accelerated across the globe." He continues to say that if you look at the cost of living as measured by the rate of inflation between 2019 and now, the rate of inflation has increased by 5-fold in Ghana. It has increased by 16-fold in Togo. It has increased by 11-fold in Senegal, and is increased by 7-fold in Cote d'Ivoire and 8-fold in the United Kingdom. The increase in the cost of living has caused hardship not only in Ghana but many other countries. Those are the two big stories. And the last one is that Oforiatta is not ready to go. That story is on page 3. We know that Benjamin and Mr. Brima, that various sectors or various people have been asking for him to resign, but he says that aside an earlier claim by Mr. Oforiatta that asking him to resign is like telling a father to resign from his children because he changed his mind. The minister has stated that he was ready, everything possible to turn to the country's economy around as the future looks bright.
Okay, so just an interjection before you come in with Mr. Suleiman Abraham.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share my thoughts. So you see, it's been bandied around 16 times when it comes to, the Ivory Coast. They mentioned a number of countries.
Yeah.
Technically, it's not correct. When you look at the data as per what some economists have given us, it is not exactly the case. And then again, you even want to do a comparison. I was in Togo recently. Their fuel prices are hovering around something a little less than 10 cedis.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
They are pumping about $20 million every month to stabilize their economy.
Yeah.
They are putting the people first. You get it?
Okay.
So the shocks there are very different from what we are seeing here. So some of the comparisons that are made ought to be made in context.
Okay.
It's important that
Makes
we do
sense,
that.
yeah.
And again, it was interesting because as the vice president said these things at the Hogbechochoza, you would notice that he was heckled a lot. I don't want to get into it,
Yeah.
but it's becoming a trend now, and I think that's it should send a message. Sulemana, maybe you can bring him
You
in
can
now.
go ahead. Yeah. So we have 3 stories. Akufo-Addo government has created more jobs than any other in the Fourth Republic. The NPP rubbishes the Ku Me Preko demo, and Oforiatta not ready to go. Your thoughts on these 3 stories?
Well, a few things. One, we have a government that doesn't care about facts, and what it believes in is propaganda and PR. I have said this several times that we have a government that believes that public relations can do any and everything in terms of governance, and it has consistently proven to be something that doesn't work, and yet the government still believes that it can survive on propaganda and public relations. And for me, it's not quite surprising that even in the engagement with IMF, the issues of facts are coming up as a matter of contention. 2-3 years ago, no, less than actually 2 years ago, we put out a fact-check report in which we indicated that the government of Ghana was presenting different data to the people of Ghana through Parliament, and then different data to IMF as far as our economy is concerned. And it continues to believe that it can, survive on PR, propaganda, putting out falsehood and all of that. And I say this because certainly what the president said in terms of the inflationary rates in the other countries are certainly non-factual and untenable. Even if it were the case, you would end up realizing that he's just basically putting out misleading facts. Because why? If a country has an inflation rate of, let's say, 2%, and then you say it has increased by tenfolds, what would that mean? That would be 20%. So, and if you were already at, let's say, 10% and you've increased by 5-folds, and then you are now at 50%, you want to compare yourself to a country that has, let's say, inflation of 20%. And beyond that, I'm saying that, look, what is even putting out in terms of 5-fold, 11-fold, 16-fold, to the extent of even saying that there are petrol queues in France, when he knows very well that the queues are as a result of, petroleum sector workers being on strike and not because of any economic crisis. So fundamental point is that the government does not believe in facts and does not believe in telling the people the truth. Now, the second point I want to make is that really, at this stage, it's just fair to conclude that President Akufo-Addo has been the worst president we've had, at least in my lifetime. I was growing up during the time of the Rawlings military era. And then I experienced him under civilian rule, President Kufuor, President Mills, President Mahama, and now him. And of course, I've read about previous governments that we've had in the history of our country. And I think that President Akufo-Addo has proven to be the worst president we've had, at least in post-independent Ghana. Look, you can look at state capture, and President Akufo-Addo has made us experience the worst form of state capture. You can look at nepotism, and we are experiencing the worst forms of nepotism under President Akufo-Addo. You can look at lack of policy credibility of a government, and we are experiencing the worst forms of it under President Akufo-Addo. You can look at the issue of policy failure, planting for food and jobs, one village, one dam, and all those, highfalutin policies. They've all failed. You can look at the issue of corruption, and President Akufo-Addo and the President Akufo-Addo, we are experiencing the worst forms of it. So I don't know what else it would be for one to conclude that this president is the worst president in our history. And surprisingly, look, even military regimes would sometimes listen to the call of their people. We have had this crisis on for a while now. The government continued to deceive itself and to deceive the people. When we said it was a crisis, it said, no, it's a challenge. We are not in a crisis. Then eventually they've admitted we are in a crisis. And the president still says, look, I have the best of people in charge. This is the only time in my life that I'm experiencing a president who would appoint somebody and cannot just remove them even if they are not performing. Like the agri minister. Planting for food and jobs, it has been a catastrophic failure. And it is part of the reasons why we are where we are. food prices increasing. And yet we've pumped billions of cedis into the agri sector over the last 6 years. Nothing is happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you have the worst form of leadership, this is what you would experience. They wouldn't listen to the people. And when even the finance minister has put us into this deep hole, the president says we should continue to allow him to dig us deeper. Until when, I don't know.
Until when, we don't know.
Well, there are issues obviously to discuss, even as we look forward to a budgetary, analysis or reading, because that has also been postponed on the back of not securing an IMF deal. Well, we're getting into those details later. This evening between 7 and 9 p.m., we'll be discoursing on those with crack economists and other people in that space. But let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper. It's 13 days to go when it comes to the countdown to World Cup 2022 in Qatar. There's also a picture there of Togbisri left welcoming Otumfuose to the second to the Hogbechocho festival. Did you see his retinue?
I did.
Did you see the swag?
I saw the swag.
It was
I saw the
beautiful.
colors. It was amazing. I wish I was there.
Yeah, I loved the way the Anglos and the Ashantis, they have quite a history. It's a rich tapestry of history dating back centuries.
I see.
And here they are doing it again. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, at Anglo Hogbechocho Festival, will curtail high food and fuel prices. Veep assures Ghanaians. There we go talking again. But usually my concern is, when do we walk the talk, or is it just about the talk? Publication of false news lands too in court. President attends World Leaders Summit of UN Climate Change in Egypt. We're talking about Sharm el-Sheikh. Really pertinent matters, especially as the World Bank has been telling us that if we don't get our climate, change fight right, the consequences could be dire for our country, not just our country, the continent and beyond. Protesters demonstrate in Accra against economic hardship in Ku Me Preko Reloaded. I'll just take a quick look at some of those stories. I'll start from page 15. And the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has pleaded with Ghanaians to bear with the government as it takes steps to turn around the economic fortunes of the country. Though Dr. Bawumia admitted that things were tough, which the president had done in his address before, he said it would be wrong for the government's performance to be measured by post-COVID-19 economic difficulties. Quote, judging government by the development in the global space and not including the performance of the economy when we assumed office in 2017 to 2020 is an anticlimax. We all know that period gave us a strong economy. That's the first story. Then, protesters demonstrate in Accra against economic hardship in Ku Me Preko Reloaded. Let me just take a little bit of that. And hundreds of Ghanaians on Saturday stormed the streets of Accra to protest the present economic hardships in the country and called for the resignation of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia. But just to add, this was led by private legal practitioner Martin Pebu, and the hashtag was Nana Must Go. But interestingly, if you listened to those who spoke, Mensa Thompson of ASEPA, they now mention the president, the vice president, the finance minister, and interestingly, they bring in the energy minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, and they say that, well, because in terms of energy, our fuel and others, we're struggling, and he has not done enough in that regard. Two quick stories for you to react to, Mr. Suleimana Brahima.
Well, certainly the events at Hogbechocho was really great to see those two eminent traditional leaders come together. To celebrate the event was something that was really heartwarming, and we would encourage our traditional leaders to do more now that our political leaders have proven to fail us. And look, when we talk about what is happening now, I like the fact that during the weekend's demonstration, there were talks about the fact that we need a new kind of leadership, and for me that was important because sometimes we may misconstrue what is happening to mean that therefore we had some sort of superior and far more better leadership under the NDC. I think that we experienced, of course, I wouldn't say as worse as it is now in terms of leadership, but it didn't mean that the Mahama administration was the best that we could have. And therefore, if we're talking about improving leadership in this country, it's not about saying, look, we want the kind of leadership we had under the Mahama regime. Of course, people change, and therefore, I wouldn't want to believe that if President Mahama were to become president again, we would see the same things that he did. Now, in terms of the resignations, the demands for resignations, the president, the vice president, the finance minister, now they add the energy minister. I share a different opinion. I think the problem is President Akufo-Addo. If we had a good leader in him, things wouldn't be the way they are. I would doubt if, for example, Vice President Mahama were to become president today, he would keep all these people who have been, performed so abysmally, the agri minister, the finance minister, and, all the other ministers, the health minister, for example. So the president is President Akufo-Addo. And for me, it is, if we are demanding that someone must resign for his failure, it must be the president. To extend that to say, look, we want the president, the vice president, the finance minister, the energy minister to all resign at a go. I think that we will be inviting even more crisis on ourselves. The problem is President Akufo-Addo, who has been a major failure. Some of us had absolute confidence in him, but he's proving to be not the person that we all thought he would be, and actually proving the cynics right. Those who said, look, President Akufo-Addo will give you bitter leadership. President Akufo-Addo will be a failure. Those who said, look, I cannot sleep under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo, perhaps they knew what they were talking about. And Akufo-Addo is proving them right.
Let me just wrap with just some headlines and maybe one story you may quickly want to react to. Publication of false news lands 2 in court. They've been granted 20,000 Ghana cedis bail with 2 sureties. There's also trainee teacher jailed 12 months for posing as BEC candidate. I found that one very interesting. Yeah. A trainee teacher being jailed for 12 months for posing as BEC candidate. Why is Kokonte Ghana's superfood? Check out the story on page 9 of the paper. But I just wanted to do this. In Sharm el-Sheikh, as we talk of climate change, our president is there. He'll be delivering 5 separate statements. Now, some of them include on what efforts Ghana has made in protecting her forest and oceans, and on sustainable energy and the energy transition. I found these 2 very interesting because protecting our forests and oceans, water bodies, and then the energy situation. But let's move on to other papers.
And you're looking at the Ghana situation.
The Ghana situation. I wonder what exactly he's going to say. I'm sorry I've got you in there.
It's actually very funny. Yes, Charlie. Okay, let's go to the publisher. And Ghana has only one elected president. Majority leader yells at the NDC MP. And story on page 3, Jinapo pushes climate change agenda. Don't judge us by prevailing economic situation. That's according to Dr. Baumea. But let's go to page 8. And there's a very interesting story there where fuel price is killing us. MP laments. Now, Member of Parliament for Astrojaman constituency in the Eastern region, Thomas Apim-Nyako, has implored the leadership of Parliament to consider scheduling the House to sit for 2 days a week instead of 4 to spare members the cost of fueling their vehicles. It was that since Parliament resumed sitting 2 weeks ago, plenary has only been spending 2 hours or less each day and wondered if the days could not be reduced and the working hours extended to 6 or 8 hours, he said. So he said, and I quote, that the business for this particular meeting is the budget, and I observed that for the days, beg your pardon, that we've been here, sometimes we come in and in less than 2 hours we adjourn the next day. I remember when former President Mahama was also giving his lecture, he was, calling for some institutions to, try and work on the work from home type system. Basis. Yeah, which kind of makes sense because, if I don't need to be at work, but I can still do my job, then why don't I stay at home and, do my job? And a lot of people, when you look at research, they said that during the COVID time, productivity shot up while they worked from home. So maybe that is something that we can do. But the majority leader expressed regret and described the call as very unfortunate. And I've also noticed that when you try and suggest this working from home business, a lot of the business leaders or maybe the CEOs really shun upon this because they say that, okay, we give you the work from home, you won't really work well or your productivity will go down. But Mr. Brahma, what do you think about this whole working from home to make sure that, or to kind of, cushion employees?
Well, it is a measure that we are all exploring. During COVID, we had brief moments when we had to resort to working from home. I would say that it came with some bits of challenge, because then people would complain, well, my home internet was not working well, so I couldn't connect when you need them for a meeting, or something happened at home and things didn't go the way it went. Well, my experience during COVID was that it didn't work too well for us as an organization.
Okay.
And when we reconvened, for example, we all, at management level concluded that, look, if these things had continued for us to say, continue to work from home, we would have missed a lot of our targets. And so, yes, we can continue to explore, but the context in our country perhaps is not such that we can fully go work from home. Plus, look, the attitudes of people. To what extent would people really be genuine in delivering when you say work from home and there are no monitoring mechanisms? To what extent can we guarantee that indeed people will be by their desk and doing what they have to do, if they are home? So it's a challenge. It comes down to the question of infrastructure, the question of personal attitudes and personal commitments. So it's quite a difficult one. I just want to briefly also touch on the issue of climate change and the president's involvement in the ongoing summit. Yes, climate change is a critical thing that affects the future of all of us around. Unfortunately, it has also been one of the areas that the president speaks big and does little. In fact, we published a report on October 14 this year that indicated that whereas the president makes very, very great statements on, COP, all the COPs conferences that have been organized, all the climate conferences that have been organized, and says, some of the great things that world leaders will talk about. Surprisingly, since the president assumed office in 2017, the word climate change has not appeared in any of his State of the Nation's address. And for me, that is quite strange that for 5, 6 or so years, with close to 10 State of the Nation's addresses, the issue or the words climate change not appeared in any of the State of the Nation's address. And of course, we all know what is happening with Galamsey. The president put his presidency on the line, and it goes worse, and he's still in power and giving us worse forms of leadership.
Well, we'll see, Suleimana, what exactly he has to say. We have to go, but let's wrap with just these headlines from Mapito and I. The Finder says, Dr. Baumia receives rousing welcome at Hogbechocho Festival, so different angles to the conversation.
Yeah.
And then Economy Times, job scarcity on the rise. Bank of Ghana likely to tighten policy rate further. Do you know what that would mean? A whole lot. Interest rates, policy rates, and then fuel prices to surge further as BDCs to sell at going exchange rate. I'm concerned about this one. Fuel prices to go where again?
Increase. Oh, I see.
Okay.
They said
let's draw the curtains on this because my temperature just went
up. All right. That's it for the newspaper review. Up next is sports.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Brahma, for
you.
joining the conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Sports up next.